Joining us now to discuss the issue are Sun columnist Paul Staines, who believes that the system may have been one of the factors behind the tragedy, and independent columnist Owen Jones, who says that people from all backgrounds can commit horrendous crimes and the welfare issue has nothing to do with it. Let me welcome, gentlemen. Let's first of all talk about what was said yesterday in the paper. The first paragraph of the article by Andy Dolan and Paul Bentley, which was later integrated into another article on Philpott, started by saying he treated his 17 sons and daughters like cash cows, generating a staggering benefit income of £60,000. We're still not quite sure what that sum actually is and whether 60,000 is accurate. In a third paragraph, Philpott was described as a drug-taking layabout who embodies everything that is wrong with the welfare state. The newspaper also featured a column by Ian Wilson, which claims that Philpott's life shows the pervasiveness of evil born out of welfare dependency. So you say, Paul, that was spot on.
Well, the judge in the summing up did point out that Philpott received all the benefits into his bank account. The prosecution alleged that it was a factor that these 6 children, if they'd come back, he'd had £1,000 more in benefits. We can't say he was a controlling character, but I can't believe that he didn't see these children as a meal ticket.
So, Owen, you say the complete opposite of this. In fact, you called this shameful. You said this was a shameful moment in British media.
It's beyond shameful. I think it's not simply that I'm angry about this grotesque front page. I'm sad that we're not talking about these 6 little kids whose lives have been snuffed out, who will never grow old, never fall in love, never have kids of their own because of this monster who killed them. Instead, that tragedy has been hijacked for political ends. Now, if we think about other monsters from all backgrounds, Harold Shipman said nothing about other doctors. Last week, a man called Stephen Seddon was sentenced for life for killing his 2 parents in order to extort £230,000 worth of inheritance. That says nothing about inheritance. 4 years ago, a millionaire businessman killed his daughter and his wife and then burned the house down. That says nothing about millionaire Britain. The reality is there have always been horrendous, disgusting, cruel individuals from all backgrounds, and to use this to make that point, and bear in mind what the welfare state is, because this is why it's such an insult to millions of people. It's an insult to millions of pensioners who make up over 40% of welfare spending. It's an insult to millions of parents who take child benefit. It's an insult to millions of workers who take tax credits, which are in-work benefits. It's an insult to disabled people, to unemployed people, like the people who've just been sacked at Jessop's and HMV. They had nothing to do with this monster. He's an extreme, disgusting man, and he should take responsibility in him alone.
Suggesting that ordinary people who are on welfare are going to be arsonists and kill children. Owen's happy to point out the excesses of capitalism and the banking crisis. This is the excesses of welfarism. This man had 17 children. When me and my wife decided to have a child, it was a big decision. You know, financial costs, with the flat, we'd have to move out the flat, get a house. For him, it wasn't a big decision. Every child he got was extra money. It was a meal ticket for him getting a bigger house and more income.
But isn't it a very easy political point to make?
Well, if it's the truth, it is an easy political point to make. I'm not saying for 1 second that everybody is like Philpott, who's on welfare. But how does it happen that someone can have 17 children and no job for 20 years? You had him on the sofa here. What did you think? He wasn't a man motivated in the normal way that people are.
Can I just point out just how unrepresentative this disgusting creature was of the welfare system? There are 1.35 million households in this country in which at least one adult claims an out-of-work benefit. Do you know how many of those have more than 10 kids? It's not 500,000, it's not 200,000, it's less than that, it's 190. These people are not representative, and yet what we constantly have, even before this horrendous incident, is tabloid journalists and politicians hunting out the most extreme, freakish examples and passing it off as though they're the tip of the iceberg. The reality is most people on benefits, whether they're in work, because most people get in-work benefits who are on the welfare state, if you like, those people are people who are decent people, who are trying to get on, who are either looking for work or in work and are on low pay.
So, Paul, what would you say to that? I mean, those that legitimately rely on welfare to survive, for example, I mean, is it offensive to them?
Well, I think decent people who have maybe lost their job and are trying to get on and find a job, they will be the most outraged that people can have 17 children on welfare. You know,
but these people represent this family, this family represents absolutely nothing but themselves. And I have to say, Paul, your attempt to turn the tragedy involving 17 kids into a... Because you don't like the welfare state. You want the welfare state taken down.
I think
and you are using the killing...
Want to see this kind of thing happen again.
No, of course, none of us want this thing happening again.
17 children on welfare.
None of us want a tragedy...
You'd have to be a millionaire to afford that if you didn't claim welfare.
A tragedy involving the deaths of 6 little kids being hijacked by you and others to make a political point about the welfare state is, in my view, repulsive. No, I'm not. I'm saying this person should take personal, individual responsibility.
Just jump in now. Isn't it possible, Paul, that a front page like this one would incite hatred of those who are legitimately taking their benefit?
No, I think when you had him on, you weren't inciting hatred against him. You were saying, what is going on here, that this man can have 17 children on welfare? That's what you were highlighting. You weren't trying to incite hatred against him.
Well, we had him on because it was a breaking story. It was a
breaking story today. He's just been sentenced.
But at no point did I call him a vile product of Welfare UK.
Well, I think he was a vile product of Welfare UK.
It wasn't a vile product of Welfare UK because, as I said, millions of people depend on the welfare state and have absolutely nothing to do with this monster. And it lets him off the hook to suggest he does.
Do you believe that this has something like that has consequences on the street?
I think it does have consequences, yes, because what we've had for the last few years is an attempt to demonise unemployed people, disabled people, others who rely on benefits, using these extreme examples to pass them off as representative. I'll tell you why it does have consequences. Coalition of Disabled Charities at the beginning of last year said that abuse towards disabled people had soared on the street because of the whole language of scroungers, the idea that people are on the take, people on the mick. There's a tiny proportion of people in this country, tiny proportion, who play the system, and yet they are passed off as though they're the tip of the iceberg, whilst people who are looking for work which isn't there, like, for example, Costa Coffee opening up a shop in Nottingham, 8 near minimum wage jobs, 1,701 people applied for those jobs. That's the desperation for work out there, but all we ever hit are the extreme examples of scroungers.
What are you going to do to stop people abusing the system? We're agreed on that. He's abusing the system. But you offer nothing to stop it.
No, absolutely. We in terms of clamping down on people playing the system, if you like, I'll give you an example just of what we have in this country, benefit fraud, which does exist.
What are you going to do about the Philpotts of the world?
The Philpotts of the world, as I said, are a tiny, tiny proportion of people. There are 190...
So you're just going to let that happen?
What happened?
All the people on ordinary benefits who have just got out of work and are trying to get a job are disgusted with the likes of people like him.
You are tying the two together.
2 decades,
Paul,
20 years of claiming benefits, never working to support his children.
Paul, you're tying the two together.
How many families had to pay the taxes?
Do you want me to respond?
£60,000?
Do you want me to respond?
Well, hold on, you've had a long talk. £60,000, that takes 10 families on average income to pay the taxes for him to lay about, smoking dope, dogging, having sex on the snooker table.
Paul,
you didn't do anything to stop him.
Paul,
I hope the government clamps down, stops people claiming
Paul,
benefits.
if we're going to talk